I will be discussing Chapter 7, Psychological Interventions with Football Teams or Soccer Teams. In the introduction of this chapter, it spoke about how historically one of the most traditional sports is soccer, how soccer, because of its concept of being a traditional sport, requires a lot of structural changes, and how coaches and players have been ignorant to the absence of sports psychology. How sports psychologists are becoming more and more important to the sport of soccer, but are asked to adapt to different aspects and changes of the sport. Those different aspects of the sport will be introduced and discussed about in this presentation. The psychological peculiarities of football. Sports psychologists need to take into consideration the different varying stages of an athlete's day to establish objectives accordingly. Athletes, team routines, typical of practically all football teams, are to be known, so psychologists know when to intervene. Demands arising in competitions. Achieving optimal arousal level throughout match, which means that the players should learn to perform in the best psychological conditions from the first minute of the game to the last. Self-control during adverse situations basically means to keep a straight-minded approach throughout the adverse situation that will occur during the game or after the game. Interactions with referees and rivals. It's difficult for athletes sometimes to keep emotions under control towards referees or opponents. So it's up to the player to keep his emotions under control. Pressure from coaches. Numerous outside stressors are going to be brought up to a player that must be employed with psychological strategies to attain peak performance and well-being. The media. As a professional soccer athlete, the media seems to attract more towards soccer. The media can be both beneficial and damaging to a player. So it's very crucial that an athlete have psychological strategies to control its effects. Basic recommendations for psychological demands of football. There are two different teams, the grassroots football teams and the elite professional teams. Sports psychologists work in various ways depending on whether the intervention is directed towards elite professional teams or grassroots football teams. How much intervention and focus and determination is put into a grassroots team depends on the team's objectives, which means, is the team wanting to start from scratch, or is it to train and create top-class footballers? Psychological interventions will differ according to the circumstances. Elite professional football teams' main objectives: keep athletes under control, improve team unity if needed, work with rookie athletes to become accustomed to the professional life. Elite professional soccer teams, a psychologist's work for a professional team are obviously going to be a lot different than from a grassroots team. Athletes have already sufficiently developed their performance facets throughout an array of phases. Coaches know what they're striving for when it comes to the team and its core values. A sports psychologist must adapt to the environment completely to fully understand the team and its plays, to know what interventions to use in certain situations. Psychological guidance with individuals involved in football, such as coaches, players, physical trainers, and also parents. Coaches. A sports psychologist can provide a coach with strategies to apply with players to improve performance. A psychologist can also assist coaches to gradually take control of the team through some learning suitable strategies to employ in different situations. Also, coaches are given two different interventions. One is a direct intervention to improve personal performance, and the second one is indirect intervention, assisting coaches with strategies to use toward the team in different situations. Players. Helping player reach maximum potential performance. Psychologists meet one-on-one with the individual player to go deeper into the player's feelings to increase personal psychological performance. Physical trainers. Psychologists, just like coaches, physical trainers, are given assistance to reach personal performance towards the team. They are also given physical trainer tips to better improve the psychological aspects of training athletes to help them reach full potential. Parents. Sports psychologists give parents guidelines to follow to not be the parent on the sideline yelling, trying to become a coach. Also learning to motivate their child the right way and not in the wrong. Teach parents how to separate being a coach of a team and being a parent to a child who plays for their team. A psychological intervention model for football teams. It is important for a sports psychologist to become familiar with the sport of soccer. It's also important to make his presence known towards the coach and why the sports psychologist is there for. A proposed evaluation model to use when commencing work with a football team has three functions. Number 1, evaluation of the club. Number 2, evaluation of the coach. And number 3, evaluation of players. Club evaluation. Understanding the club structure, organization, history, and a number of players and coaches is very crucial to a psychologist to know and understand. Coach evaluation. Getting to know the coach and staff to see where their point of view is for the team. At the same time, introducing the coaches of the type of psychological work they will be experiencing along the way. Player evaluation, the most important. Players are evaluated through questionnaires to measure various psychological variables, whether it be in training or in matches. Sports psychologists also use observations, game clips, and one-on-one interventions to know the players. My conclusions. In the sport of soccer, many different circumstances will arise, and it is up to the sports psychologist to adapt and adjust. Also, basic elements sports psychologists should take into account when approaching the soccer environment has been discussed, and the different aspects of coaches or athletes' environment with the game of soccer are dealt with. Here are two of my journal articles that I used.